Princess stood at the tall window of her chamber and watched the 3 moons rise over the capital city. The lights of 1,000 towers glowed soft purple against the night sky. It was beautiful. It was home. And somewhere out there, someone wanted her dead. The assassination attempt had happened 3 days ago. A poisoned dart had missed her neck by the width of a finger. Her old bodyguard, a trained warrior of the species, had died stopping the second dart. She still remembered the sound he made when he fell. Now the Royal Council had decided she needed new protection. But instead of another warrior, instead of a battle master, instead of anyone useful, they had chosen a human. A human. Turned away from the window and looked at her mother's message on the screen again. The words had not changed. A human male named Han Wu would arrive tonight to serve as her personal guard. He came highly recommended. He had experience. He was the best choice. The best choice almost laughed. Humans were small. Humans were soft. Humans came from a death world, yes, but that only meant they were good at surviving, not fighting. They lived short lives and broke easily. Everyone in the galaxy knew this. She was a princess of the Empire. Her people stood 8 feet tall with skin like polished silver and eyes that could see in complete darkness. They had ruled 100 worlds for 10,000 years. And now she was supposed to trust her life to a creature that barely reached her shoulder. The door chimed. Straightened her back and lifted her chin. She was royalty. She would not show her disappointment. She would accept this human, treat him with cold politeness, and request a proper guard in the morning. "Enter," she said. The door slid open and Advisor walked in first. He was old and thin, with gray streaks in his silver skin. He had served her mother for 40 years. Behind him came the human. Kept her face still, but inside she felt her heart sink. He was even smaller than she had expected. He stood perhaps 5 feet and 8 inches tall, which was average for a human male but tiny compared to any. He had black hair cut short and a plain face with brown eyes. He wore simple dark clothes with no armor, no weapons visible, nothing that said warrior or protector. He looked like a servant. He looked like someone who carried bags and opened doors. He did not look like someone who could stop an assassin. "Your Highness," said with a bow, "may I present Han Wu of Earth? He will serve as your personal guard starting tonight." The human bowed. It was a proper bow, deep and respectful, held for exactly the right amount of time. Someone had taught him customs. "Princess," the human said. His voice was quiet and calm. "I am honored to serve you." His accent was strange, but his words were clear. He spoke the language well. Another surprise, but a small one. Did not invite him to rise. She let him stay in his bow for a long moment, longer than was polite. She wanted him to understand his place. She wanted him to know that she did not want him here. Finally she spoke, "You may rise." The human straightened. His face showed nothing, no anger at her rudeness, no fear, no pride, just patience. Advisor said, "I must question this decision. Surely there are better choices for my protection. A warrior. Even one of our own soldiers would be more suitable." Smiled his thin smile. "The council considered all options, Your Highness. Han Wu has protected members of 12 different royal families across the galaxy. None of them have ever been harmed under his watch. His record is perfect." "Records can be created," said. "References can be bought." "His references come from Queen of the," said, "and from Emperor himself, and from the High Council of the Republics. These are not people who sell their words." Felt a small crack in her certainty. Those were powerful names, important names. But still, looking at this small, plain human, she could not believe it. "How?" she asked. She was asking the human now, not, "How does someone like you protect anyone? You have no claws, no armor, no venom. You are not fast. You are not strong. What can you possibly do that a true warrior cannot?" The human met her eyes. Most species could not hold the gaze of an royal. The weight of it made them look away. But this human did not look away. "I do not stop, Your Highness," he said simply. "When others fall, I continue. When the situation is impossible, I find a way. This is what humans do. This is what I will do for you." Stared at him, such simple words, such quiet confidence, it irritated her. "Pretty words," she said coldly. "We will see if they mean anything." She turned to, "He can stay tonight, but tomorrow I will speak to my mother about a proper replacement." "Bode as you wish, Your Highness." He turned to the human. "You will stand guard outside her chamber door tonight. Do not enter unless called." The human bowed again. "Understood." Left. The human walked to the door and took his position outside. Before the door closed, saw him stand with his back straight and his hands clasped behind him. His eyes watched the corridor with calm attention. The door slid shut. Returned to her window. She told herself she would sleep well tonight, that she was not worried, that this human meant nothing. But something about his eyes stayed with her. Something about the way he had said those words. "I do not stop." She had heard warriors make bold claims before. She had seen them fail when the moment came. This human would be no different. He would prove himself useless, and she would get a real protector. But as she prepared for sleep, she found herself glancing at the door. She found herself wondering about this Han Wu, about the 12 royal families he had protected, about why the greatest names in the galaxy trusted him. She pushed the thoughts away and closed her eyes. Outside her door, the human stood in the darkness. He did not move. He did not rest. He simply watched and waited, as he had done 1,000 nights before, as he would do 1,000 nights more. This was his purpose. This was his duty. He had taken it on the moment he bowed to the princess, and he would not set it down until his last breath. The princess did not know it yet, but her life was now the most protected thing in the galaxy, because a human had claimed it, and humans did not let go. The 3 moons crossed the sky. The night grew deep and cold, and Han Wu stood guard, silent and still, while his princess slept. The diplomatic ship landed on Prime under a gray and heavy sky. Rain fell in thick sheets, turning the landing platform into a mirror of dark water. Princess watched through the window and felt the cold of this world even through the ship's walls. Prime was not a friendly place. The people had been enemies of the Empire for 300 years before the peace treaty. Now they were allies, but the old hatred still lived in many hearts. This visit was supposed to help build trust, was supposed to smile and speak kind words, and pretend that soldiers had not killed her grandfather in the last war. She did not want to be here. Behind her, the human stood in his usual silence. 2 weeks had passed since his arrival and had not been able to replace him. Every request to her mother came back with the same answer: keep the human, trust the council's decision, give him a chance. So she had given him a chance. She had watched him stand outside her door every night without rest. She had seen him taste her food before she ate, checking for poison. She had noticed how his eyes moved constantly, always watching, always alert. But she had not seen him fight. She had not seen him do anything that proved he could protect her. Today would be different. Today they would walk among people who might still want her dead. "We are landing," said without turning around. "Stay close, but not too close. I do not want them to think I am afraid." "Yes, Your Highness," the human said. The ship touched down with a gentle bump. The doors opened and walked out into the rain. Her silver skin did not feel cold the way human skin did, but she still disliked the wet. She kept her face calm and proud as she walked toward the waiting delegation. There were large creatures, almost as tall as the but wider and covered in thick brown scales. They had 4 arms and faces like stone, with small dark eyes that showed nothing. Their leader stepped forward and gave a shallow bow. "Princess," he said, "I am General. Welcome to Prime." "General," returned the bow with exactly the same depth. Not deeper, not shallower. A message of equality. "Thank you for receiving me." The general's eyes moved past her to the human. Something changed in his face. Not quite surprise, not quite interest, something darker. "You bring only one guard?" he asked, "and a human at that." "One is enough," said. She did not believe it, but she would not show weakness here. The general made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Very well, please follow me. The council hall is this way." They walked through the rain toward a great building of black stone. Soldiers lined the path, standing still as statues in their heavy armor. Counted them, 20, 30, 40, all armed with blade staffs that could cut through steel. The human walked 3 steps behind her and 1 step to the left. His eyes never stopped moving. His hands hung loose at his sides, relaxed but ready. They entered the building and the rain stopped. The council hall was vast and cold, filled with shadows and the smell of old stone. More waited inside, seated at a long curved table. They watched with those small dark eyes that gave nothing away. The meeting began. Words were exchanged, promises were made, smiled and nodded and said the things she was supposed to say. They did the same. It was a dance that meant nothing, a show for the records and the cameras. Then everything changed. The doors at the far end of the hall burst open. Figures in black rushed in, moving fast, weapons raised. Heard shouts and screams. She saw soldiers fall. She saw General reach for his weapon too slow. And then she saw the human move. It happened so fast that her eyes could barely follow. One moment he was behind her. The next he was in front of her, pushing her down behind the table. She heard the crack of gunfire and felt something hot spray across her face. Blood, human blood. The human had taken a shot meant for her. But he did not fall. He turned and ran toward the attackers, watched in shock as this small, soft creature threw himself at enemies twice his size. He had no gun. He had only a short blade that appeared in his hand from somewhere. The first attacker died before he knew the human was there. The blade went through his throat and out again in one smooth motion. The second attacker raised his weapon, but the human was already inside his guard, the blade finding the gap in his armor. 3 more came at once. The human took a wound to his arm but did not slow. He ducked under a swing, drove his blade into a knee, rolled away from a shot that burned the floor where he had been. Could not look away. This was not fighting as she knew it. This was something else, something raw and terrible and beautiful. The human moved like water, like wind, like death itself. He made no sound. He showed no fear. He simply killed one after another until the floor was covered in bodies. A shot hit him in the side. He stumbled but did not fall. Another shot grazed his head, leaving a line of red across his scalp. He kept moving. The last 3 attackers tried to run. The human caught them at the door. 2 died in seconds. The third fell to his knees and begged for mercy. The human looked at him for a long moment. Then he turned away, letting the soldiers take the survivor. Silence filled the hall. Stood slowly, her legs shaking. She looked at the human. He was covered in blood, some his own and some from others. He had wounds that would have killed most species, but he was still standing. He was still watching the room, still looking for threats. "Your Highness," he said, and his voice was steady as if he had not just done the impossible. "Are you hurt?" "No," whispered. "No, I am not hurt." He nodded once, then his knees buckled and he fell. Ran to him. She did not think about it. She did not remember that she was a princess and he was just a guard. She only knew that he had saved her life, and now he was bleeding on the cold stone floor. "Help him," she shouted. "Someone help him." They rushed forward. Medics appeared. Hands lifted the human and carried him away, tried to follow, but General stopped her. "Princess, you must go to a safe place. There may be more attackers." "I do not care about more attackers," said. "I want to know if my guard will live." General looked at her with something new in his eyes. Respect, maybe, or wonder. "Your human killed 16 of them," he said quietly. "Alone, wounded, with only a blade. I have never seen anything like it." Said nothing. She watched the medics carry the human away, and she felt something break inside her chest. Something she had built up over years of being told that humans were weak, that humans were lesser, that humans did not matter. It was all lies. This human had nearly died for her without hesitation. He had fought through pain that would have stopped anyone else. He had done exactly what he promised. He did not stop. Made a decision in that moment. She would stay at this human's side until he woke. She would thank him. She would apologize for every cold word and every dismissive look, and she would never let anyone call him weak again. She was a princess of the Empire, and this human was hers. The human woke 3 days after the attack on Prime, was sitting beside his bed when his eyes opened. "Your Highness," he said and tried to rise. "Stay down," said quickly. "You were shot twice and stabbed once. The doctors say you need another week to heal." The human settled back against the pillows, but his eyes moved around the room, checking the corners, checking the door, always watching, even now. "The attackers?" he asked. "A rebel group that wanted to destroy the peace talks. The survivor gave up their names. The army is hunting them down." The human nodded. "And you were not hurt?" "No, because of you." Silence fell between them, looked at her hands folded in her lap. She had practiced what she wanted to say. She had rehearsed the words 100 times, but now they felt too small for what she meant. "I was wrong about you," she said finally. "I thought you were weak. I thought you could not protect me. I was a fool." The human watched her with those calm brown eyes. "You thought what everyone thinks about humans. I am used to it." "That does not make it right," lifted her head and met his gaze. "I am sorry, Han Wu. I treated you badly and you saved my life anyway. I do not deserve your loyalty." "With respect, Your Highness," the human said, "that is not for you to decide. I chose to serve you. Your opinion of me does not change my duty." It was such a simple answer, such a human answer. Found herself smiling for the first time in days. "Then I will try to be worthy of that duty," she said. The months that followed changed everything. Had always kept distance from her guards. They were servants. They were tools. They protected her body but had no place in her life. But she could not keep distance from Han Wu. After what he had done, after what she had seen, she could not pretend he was just another guard. She began to talk to him. Not orders, not instructions, but real conversation. She asked about his home world, about Earth, about the place called Korea where he was born. He told her about mountains and rivers and cities full of lights. He told her about seasons that changed and oceans that stretched forever. "Do you miss it?" she asked one evening as they sat in her garden. The 3 moons hung low over the flowers, casting silver light on everything. "Sometimes," he said, "but a human can make a home anywhere. It is one of our gifts." "Or one of your curses," said softly. He smiled. It was small and brief, but it was real. She had never seen him smile before. "Perhaps both," he agreed. She learned about his past. He had been a soldier first, then a protector. He had served 12 families before her, keeping their children safe through wars and assassinations and disasters. None of them had ever been harmed. "Why do you do this?" asked. "You could have a normal life, a family of your own. Why spend your years guarding strangers?" "Because someone must," he said. "Because there are people who cannot protect themselves. Because when I stand between someone and danger, I feel like I am doing what I was meant to do." Thought about that for a long time. She learned his habits. He slept only 4 hours a night and never deeply. He ate simple food and drank only water. He trained every morning before dawn, moving through forms with his blade until his body was covered in sweat. She watched him once from her window and felt something strange in her chest, something warm and heavy. He learned her habits too. He knew when she was tired by the way she held her shoulders. He knew when she was angry by the set of her jaw. He knew when she was sad, even when she tried to hide it. And on those sad days he would find small ways to help. A cup of warm tea left on her desk. A flower from the garden placed beside her door. Never a word about it, never seeking thanks, just quiet kindness. The court began to notice the change. They saw the princess and her human walking together in the halls. They saw them talking in the garden. They whispered about it the way courts always whisper. Some thought it was strange. Some thought it was wrong. And Princess, growing close to a human servant, did not care what they thought. One night she could not sleep. Old fears crept into her mind. The face of the assassin who had killed her first guard. The sound of gunfire on Prime. The knowledge that somewhere out there, enemies still wanted her dead. She got up and walked to her door. She opened it. Han Wu stood outside, as he did every night. He turned when the door opened, his hand moving toward his weapon before he recognized her. "Your Highness, is something wrong?" "I cannot sleep," said. She felt foolish saying it. She was a princess. She was not supposed to admit weakness. But the human just nodded. "Would you like company?" They sat together in the garden under the 3 moons. The night was warm and quiet. Pulled her knees to her chest and looked up at the stars. "Are you ever afraid?" she asked. "Yes," he said, "always." She turned to look at him. "But you never show it, you never hesitate." "Fear does not go away," he said. "You just learn to move through it, to act even when you are afraid. That is courage, Your Highness. Not the absence of fear, but the will to continue despite it." Thought about his words. She thought about all the times she had been afraid and had hidden behind walls of cold pride. She thought about all the times she had pushed people away because it was easier than letting them in. "Will you teach me," she asked softly, "how to be brave like you?" The human was quiet for a moment. Then he began to sing. It was a human song, soft and slow. The words were in his native language, so she did not understand them. But the feeling was clear. It was a song about hope, about standing strong when everything was dark, about finding light even in the deepest night. When the song ended, had tears in her eyes. She did not know why. She only knew that something inside her had shifted. Something had opened. "That was beautiful," she whispered. "My mother sang it to me when I was a child," he said. "When I was afraid of the dark. She told me that as long as I could remember the song, I would never truly be alone." Reached out and touched his hand. It was warm and rough, so different from her own smooth silver skin. He did not pull away. "Thank you," she said, "for protecting me, for talking to me, for being here." "Always, Your Highness," he said, "for as long as I breathe." They sat together until the first sun began to rise, then went back to her chamber and finally slept, peaceful and unafraid. Outside her door, Han Wu took his position again, but something had changed in him too. The princess was no longer just a duty. She was no longer just someone to protect. She was someone he would die for, not because it was his job, but because he could not imagine a world without her in it. This was dangerous. He knew it was dangerous. A guard should never care this much. A human should never look at a princess this way. But humans had never been good at doing what they should. He stood in the growing light and watched her door, and he made a silent promise that no matter what came, no matter what it cost, he would keep her safe, even if it destroyed him. The coup began at midnight. Woke to the sound of explosions. The palace shook. Alarms screamed through the corridors. She threw off her blankets and ran to the door. Han Wu was already there, his blade drawn. "Stay behind me," he said. "Something is very wrong." They moved through the halls together. The lights flickered and died, leaving only the glow of emergency panels. Smoke drifted in the air. Could hear gunfire somewhere far away. Screams, the clash of metal. "What is happening?" she asked. "A coup," the human said. "Someone is trying to take the throne." They turned a corner and found bodies. Palace guards, loyal soldiers, all dead. Felt her heart's pound against her ribs. This was not a small attack. This was an army. "We need to reach your mother," Wu said. They ran toward the throne room, but before they could reach it, soldiers appeared in front of them. Not loyal soldiers. These wore black armor with a symbol knew well, the symbol of advisor. The old advisor who had served her mother for 40 years, the one who had brought Wu to her in the first place. It was a trap. It had all been a trap. "There she is," one of the soldiers shouted. "Take her alive, kill the human." Wu moved. Had seen him fight before, but this was different. This was not protection. This was war. He met the first soldier with a strike so fast that the man was dead before he hit the ground. The second died a heartbeat later. The third managed to raise his weapon, but Wu was already past him, blade cutting through armor like it was cloth. More soldiers came, 10, 20. They filled the corridor, pressing forward in waves. Wu stood in front of like a wall of fury, his blade singing through the air. But there were too many. A shot caught him in the leg. He stumbled but did not fall. Another shot hit his shoulder. He switched his blade to his other hand and kept fighting. "Go," he shouted at, "run, find your mother. I will not leave you. You must." He turned to look at her, and for the first time she saw fear in his eyes. Not fear for himself, fear for her. "Please, your highness, go, I will find you, I promise." More soldiers poured into the corridor. Wu threw himself at them, buying her time with his blood. Ran. She ran through burning halls and smoke-filled passages. She ran past bodies of people she had known all her life. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs screamed for rest. But they were waiting for her. Advisor stood in the grand hall with 50 soldiers at his back. He looked at with those cold old eyes and smiled his thin smile. "Princess," he said, "how good of you to join us." Traitor spat, "My mother trusted you." "Your mother is weak. The Empire needs new leadership, stronger leadership." He gestured to his soldiers. "Take her to the cells. She will be useful when negotiations begin." They grabbed her arms. She fought, but she was not a warrior. She was a princess who had never learned to fight. They dragged her away while laughed. In the cells beneath the palace, sat alone in the dark. She thought about her mother, wondering if she was alive or dead. She thought about the Empire, wondering if it would survive this night. And she thought about Wu. He was dead, he had to be dead. No one could survive what she had seen. Those wounds, those numbers, not even a human could walk away from that. She pulled her knees to her chest and let the tears come. She cried for her guard. She cried for her friend. She cried for the man who had taught her to be brave and had given his life so she could run. Hours passed. The palace grew quiet. The fighting ended. Heard guards walking past her cell, talking about the victory, about how it would be crowned in the morning. Then she heard something else. A soft sound, a thump, a body falling. Silence. The cell door opened. Han Wu stood in the doorway. He was covered in blood. His left arm hung useless at his side. A wound on his head had painted half his face red. He moved like every step was agony. But he was alive, he was here. "Your Highness," he said, and his voice was barely a whisper, "I told you I would find you." Threw herself at him. She wrapped her arms around him and held tight, not caring about the blood, not caring about the pain it might cause. He was alive. Her human was alive. "How," she choked out, "how is this possible?" "I do not stop," he said simply. "I told you, when others fall, I continue." He had fought through an army. He had dragged his broken body through the palace. He had killed anyone who stood between him and her cell, because he had promised, because he had made a choice, because humans did not let go. "Can you walk?" he asked. "Yes." "Then we must go. Has your mother in the throne room. He plans to execute her at dawn." Felt cold rage fill her chest. "Then we stop him." They moved through the palace like ghosts. Wu knew the paths the soldiers did not watch. He had memorized every corridor, every door, every shadow in his months of service. Even wounded, even dying, his mind was sharp. They found weapons on fallen soldiers, a blade for, a gun for Wu. They moved together, two against an army, and somehow they survived. Guards fell before they knew anyone was there. Wu could not fight as he had before, but he could still aim. He could still shoot. His hands were steady even when his body was failing. Watched him and felt her hearts break with every step. He was killing himself for her, using up the last of his strength. And he would not stop. He would not stop until she was safe or he was dead. They reached the throne room doors. Inside, Wu said, has 30 soldiers. Your mother is alive but chained to the throne. How do you know? I listened, I watched. He looked at her with those brown eyes that had seen so much death. Are you ready? Thought about all the months they had spent together, all the conversations in the garden, all the quiet moments of understanding. She thought about his song in the moonlight. She thought about his promise to always protect her. Together, she said. He nodded. They opened the doors and walked into the throne room. Turned, shock on his ancient face. The soldiers raised their weapons. And Han Wu smiled. It was not a gentle smile. It was the smile of a human who had nothing left to lose, a human who had already accepted death and found it did not scare him anymore. You should have made sure I was dead, he said. And he began to move. The throne room became a storm of violence. Wu moved like nothing had ever seen. He was beyond pain now, beyond exhaustion, beyond anything that should have been possible. He fired his gun until it was empty, then threw it at a soldier's face and drew his blade. He spun through the ranks of men like a demon made flesh. Ran toward her mother. Soldiers tried to stop her, but she had a blade now and fear had become anger. She cut through the first one. She stabbed the second. She fought with no skill but with all the fury of a daughter protecting her blood. Queen watched from her chains. Her silver face showed nothing, but her eyes followed the human with something like wonder. Screamed orders at his men, kill them both. But his men were dying too fast. Wu was a whirlwind of death, moving from target to target without pause. His broken arm hung useless, so he fought with one hand. His wounded leg threatened to give out with every step, so he kept moving, never staying still long enough to fall. 10 soldiers fell, then 15, then 20. Reached her mother and cut the chains with her blade. The queen stood, tall and proud despite everything. My daughter, she said, who is that human? My guard said, my protector. He fights like nothing I have ever seen. He fights like a human. They watched together as Wu destroyed the last of soldiers. The advisor tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The human caught him at the door and threw him to the ground. Please, begged, please, I can give you wealth, power, anything you want. Wu looked down at the old advisor with cold eyes. I want my princess safe. You tried to kill her. You tried to kill her mother. There is nothing you can offer me. He raised his blade. Wait, Queen said. The human stopped. He looked at the queen with that same steady gaze he had given months ago. No fear, no anger, just patience. He should face trial, the queen said. He should answer for his crimes before the empire. Wu was still for a long moment. Then he lowered his blade. As you wish, your majesty. He stepped back and began to cry. Soldiers loyal to the queen rushed in, summoned by the noise. They took the traitor away in chains. They secured the throne room. They checked the queen for injuries. And through it all, Han Wu stood alone in the middle of the carnage he had created, covered in blood that was mostly his own, swaying on his feet but refusing to fall. Ran to him. Wu, she said, catching him as his knees finally buckled. Wu, stay with me. Your Highness, he whispered. His voice was fading, his eyes were losing focus. Are you safe? Yes, because of you, always because of you. He smiled, that small, brief smile she had learned to treasure. Good, that is good. His eyes closed. The next hours were a blur of panic and fear. Doctors worked through the night to save the human. They said he should be dead. They said no creature should survive what he had survived. But his heart kept beating. His lungs kept breathing. His body refused to give up. Because he had promised. Because humans did not let go. Stayed by his bed. She held his hand through every surgery, every treatment, every moment of doubt. Her mother told her to rest. The court told her it was not proper. She did not care. She would not leave him. 3 days later he woke. Was asleep in the chair beside his bed when his eyes opened. He looked at her for a long moment, watching her breathe, watching her dream. Then he spoke. "You should rest in a real bed, Your Highness." Woke with a start. She saw him looking at her and burst into tears. "You fool," she said through her crying. "You wonderful, stubborn fool, you almost died." Almost is not the same as did. She laughed and cried at the same time. She held his hand tight and did not let go. The Queen came to visit that evening. She walked into the medical chamber with the grace of 10,000 years of royal blood, but she stopped when she saw the human lying in his bed. "Leave us," she said to the doctors and servants, "all of you." They left, only remained still holding Wu's hand. Queen approached the bed. She looked down at this small, wounded creature who had saved her throne and her daughter. Her silver face was impossible to read. "You killed 28 of soldiers," she said. "You did this with wounds that should have killed you 10 times over. You did this alone." "I was not alone," Wu said. "The princess was with me. She told me you found her in the cells, that you fought through the entire palace to reach her." "Yes, Your Majesty." The Queen was silent for a moment. Then she asked the question that would become legend throughout the empire. "Who guards my daughter with such courage? Who fights through death itself for her sake?" Answered before Wu could speak. "My human," she said. Her voice was strong and proud. "His name is Han Wu of Earth. He is my protector, my friend, and the bravest soul I have ever known." The Queen looked at her daughter. She saw the way held the human's hand. She saw the devotion in her eyes. She understood everything in that moment. "A human," she said softly. "All my life I was told humans were weak, lesser, not worthy of standing among the greater species." She paused. "I was wrong." Queen did something then that no monarch had done in 10,000 years. She bowed to a human. "Han Wu," she said, "you have saved my daughter and my throne. You have proven yourself beyond any measure of honor. From this day forward, you are no longer a servant. You are family. You will have a place in this palace for as long as you live. You will be treated with all the respect due to a prince of the realm." Wu tried to sit up, helped him supporting his weight. "Your Majesty," he said, "I do not need titles or honors. I only want to continue my duty. I want to protect the princess." "And you shall," the Queen said, "but you will do so as her equal, not her servant." She looked at with knowing eyes. "Something tells me that is what my daughter wants as well." Felt heat rise to her face. She looked at Wu and found him looking back at her. "Is that true?" he asked quietly. "Yes," she said. "I do not want you as my guard anymore. I want you as my partner, my companion. Whatever form that takes, whatever it means, I want you by my side not because you must be, but because you choose to be." Wu was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion he could not hide. "I chose that long ago, Your Highness. I just never thought I could say it." Leaned forward and pressed her forehead to his. It was a gesture of deep affection, of trust, of love. She did not care that her mother was watching. She did not care what the court would say. She had found her courage in this human. She had found her heart. "Then say it now," she whispered. "I will stay with you," Wu said. "Not as a guard, not as a servant, as whatever you will have me be, for as long as I breathe and beyond." Queen watched her daughter and the human, and she smiled. It was a small smile, hidden quickly, but it was real. "I will leave you two alone," she said. "There is much to rebuild. but I expect to see you both at dinner, Han Wu. We have a family to introduce you to." She left. In the quiet of the medical chamber, and Wu sat together. Outside the window, the three moons rose over a palace that had nearly fallen. The empire had survived. The queen still ruled, and a human who should have died 100 times sat holding the hand of the woman he loved. "What happens now?" Wu asked. Smiled. "Now we face whatever comes, together." "I can do that," he said. "Humans are good at facing things together." She laughed softly. "Yes, I am learning that." They sat together as the moons crossed the sky, two people from different worlds who had found each other in the darkness. A princess and her human. A love story that would be told across 100 worlds for 10,000 years. And it all began with a simple answer to a simple question. "Who guards you with such courage?" "My human,"